The Last Dreamer in a Ruined World. I dreamt again last night. The world was different, changed beyond recognition. The sky, once a canvas of blues and purples, was now a perpetual twilight, a haunting orange hue that never shifted. In my dream, I walked through the remnants of our once vibrant world, now a desolate wasteland. It all began when I stumbled upon an old city, its buildings crumbling, overtaken by nature's relentless grip. Vines and moss crept up the sides of what once were skyscrapers, now mere skeletons of a forgotten era. The streets were empty, save for the rusted husks of cars that littered the roads like the bones of a long-dead beast. As I ventured deeper into the city, I heard a sound, a faint, haunting melody. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a siren's call leading me through the labyrinth of decay. The melody grew louder as I approached a grand theater, its grandeur still visible beneath the layers of dust and decay. Inside the theater, the source of the music became clear. A grand piano sat on the stage, untouched by time, its keys moving on their own, playing a melancholy tune that echoed through the empty hall. I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, a mourning for the world that once was. The music guided me to a hidden room beneath the stage. There, in the darkness, I found a library, its shelves filled with books that held the collective knowledge and stories of humanity. Among them, a diary caught my eye. It belonged to a scientist, one of the last survivors, who had documented the downfall of our civilization. A catastrophic event, a blight upon the earth, had rendered the surface uninhabitable, forcing humanity underground. As I read the diary, the dream shifted. I was no longer in the library, but in an underground bunker, surrounded by the last remnants of humanity. We were a community of survivors, clinging to hope in a world that had none left. The bunker was our sanctuary, our last refuge against the desolation above. But even in this sanctuary, there was no escape from the nightmares that plagued our sleep. Every night, we dreamt of the world above, of the life we once had. Our dreams were a collective mourning, a shared sorrow for all that was lost. One night, the dream changed. I found myself standing at the entrance of the bunker, the heavy door ajar. Compelled by an unseen force, I stepped outside into the ruined world. The sky was ablaze with stars, a sight unseen for generations. In that moment, I understood the purpose of our dreams. They were not just a reflection of our sorrow, but a beacon of hope, a reminder of the beauty that once was and could be again. As I awoke from the dream, I realized that it was more than just a nightmare. It was a message, a call to action. We could not let the memories of the world fade into obscurity. We had to keep the dreams alive, for they were the key to our survival, the blueprint for rebuilding the world. In the end, the dream analysis revealed a profound truth. Our nightmares were not just fears to be overcome, but windows into our deepest desires and hopes. They were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still a light that shines within us all.
Whispers of a Forgotten Earth. Last night I had an oddly vivid dream. It was set in a world that seemed eerily familiar, yet hauntingly alien. This world was a post-apocalyptic landscape, scarred by an unknown cataclysm that had twisted it into a shadow of its former self. In my dream, I was wandering through an endless desert, the sands shifting underfoot, painting a desolate picture under a heavy, leaden sky. The air was thick with a silence that was almost palpable, broken only by the occasional gust of wind that carried with it the faintest whispers of forgotten voices. As I trudged through this barren expanse, I came upon a colossal, half-buried structure. It was a library, its once majestic facade now eroded by the sands of time. The great doors were ajar, inviting me into its dark, musty interior. Inside, the remnants of knowledge lay scattered, the pages of countless books fluttering in the breeze like the wings of dying birds. I felt an overwhelming urge to preserve what was left of this repository of human history. As I walked through the aisles, my hands brushed against a book with a peculiar luminescent cover. It seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Opening it, I found it blank save for a single phrase that glowed warmly on the first page. Remember who you are. The dream shifted, and I found myself in the heart of a vast underground city. It was a sanctuary for the remnants of humanity, a place where the survivors had sought refuge from the desolation above. The city was alive with the buzz of human activity, a stark contrast to the silence of the desert. People were talking, laughing, and working together to carve out a semblance of normalcy in this new world. But there was an underlying sense of unease, a collective fear that permeated the city. Every night, the people were plagued by nightmares, visions of the world above and the horrors that had befallen it. These nightmares were a shared burden, a nightly reminder of the fragility of their existence. One evening, I was drawn to a gathering in the city's central square. An old storyteller, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of ages, was recounting tales of the world before the fall. Her stories were filled with descriptions of lush forests, mighty oceans, and sprawling cities, a world so vibrant and full of life that it seemed like a fantasy. As she spoke, the crowd was mesmerized, hanging on to her every word. Her tales were not just stories, they were memories, fragments of a past that was slipping away from us. She spoke of the importance of keeping these memories alive, for they were the seeds from which a new world could be reborn. In that moment, I realized that the nightmares we all shared were not just expressions of fear and loss. They were also a canvas for our deepest hopes and dreams. They were a bridge between the past and the future, a way for us to reconnect with the world that once was, and to imagine the world that could be. When I awoke from the dream, I was filled with a sense of purpose. The dream was more than just a journey through a post-apocalyptic landscape, it was a call to action. We had to keep the memories of the old world alive, not just as a reminder of what we had lost, but as a guide for what we could rebuild. Our nightmares, with all their fear and sorrow, were also a source of inspiration, a beacon of hope in the darkness. In analyzing the dream, I understood that it was a reflection of our collective consciousness, a manifestation of our shared desire to reclaim our lost heritage and forge a new path forward. It was a reminder that even in a world that seemed irreparably broken, the human spirit remained unbroken, forever striving towards the light of a new dawn.
Echoes of a doomed world. The dream I had last night was starkly different to most, enveloped in a much darker tone. It was set in a world ravaged by an apocalypse, a once thriving planet now a shadow of its former glory. In this nightmare I found myself in a city, or what was left of it. The buildings were crumbling, skeletal remains of a forgotten civilization. The sky was an oppressive gray, heavy with the weight of unshed tears. The streets were littered with debris, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. As I walked through this desolate landscape, I came across a group of survivors. They were huddled around a dimly lit fire, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow. There was no conversation, no warmth, only a shared sense of despair. These people were not living, they were merely existing, each day a struggle against the inevitable. In the center of the group sat an old man, his hands trembling as he clutched a tattered photograph. It was an image of a world long gone, a reminder of what they had all lost. The old man's eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a depth of sorrow that was almost unbearable. The dream shifted, and I found myself in a vast underground bunker. It was a place of refuge, but it felt more like a tomb. The corridors were lined with rooms, each a small capsule of what life used to be. In one room, a family sat in silence, their eyes fixed on a static-filled television screen. In another, a young woman cradled a lifeless doll, whispering lullabies to a child that would never grow up. The bunker was a microcosm of the world above, each room a testament to the futility of our attempts to preserve normalcy in the face of oblivion. The air was heavy with a sense of mourning, a collective grief for a world that would never be the same. As I wandered through the bunker, I stumbled upon a library. The shelves were filled with books, but they were unread, their pages yellowing with age. It was as if knowledge itself had lost its value, rendered meaningless in a world without a future. In the depths of the library, I found a journal. It belonged to a scientist who had predicted the downfall of our world. The entries were filled with warnings, pleas for change that had gone unheeded. The final entry was a simple sentence, a bitter epitaph for humanity. We saw the end coming, but we chose to close our eyes. When I awoke from the dream, I was left with a sense of profound despair. The dream was not just a reflection of a post-apocalyptic world. It was a mirror to our own reality. It spoke of the consequences of our actions, of the path we could be heading down if we continued to ignore the signs. The analysis of the dream was bitter. It suggested that our nightmares are not just fears to be conquered, but warnings to be heeded. They are the echoes of a future that could come to pass if we remain blind to the impact of our choices. In this dark vision, the message was clear. We are the architects of our own doom, and unless we change our ways, the world of our nightmares could become our reality. The dream was a call to action, but one shrouded in pessimism. It challenged us to open our eyes to the world we are creating, to acknowledge the potential consequences of our neglect. In its darkest depths, it whispered a haunting truth: that sometimes the most terrifying nightmares are those that have the potential to become real.